Welcome back to Halloween Lives, the podcast of Michael Myers. I am your solo host today, Austin Duncan. Missing is my lovely, less attractive brother, Blaine. We decided to do something a little bit different for the next 2 weeks, so bear with us because it's gonna be something new for the pod. You know, if you hate it, let Blaine know. Be nice on this video though. So this week and next week, we're going to be doing our top 10 favorite moments or favorite scenes, rather, from the Halloween franchise. And so this week, you're going to get my favorite or my top 10, and next week, you'll get Blaine's. So, it's going to be a little bit different. I'm doing school still, so I got like midterms and stuff, and Blaine's got stuff going on. But we're gonna do our 2 solo episodes, and then we'll reconvene for episode 29. So without further ado, I am going to jump into my top 10 favorite scenes from the Halloween franchise. Now, we have done the top 10 kills. And this is going to be different. There's obviously a lot of killing going on in these films, right? I think everybody knows that. But there really are, not to say that there won't be kills in this list, but there really are some cool scenes that I just love every time I go back and watch any of these films. So sit back, relax, and let's reminisce about some of the best moments in this franchise. And I'm sure several of the picks will overlap between Blaine and I. I don't know his list. He doesn't know mine. So Blaine, you're watching. Hope you approve of my list. But we're going to get right started with what was actually, so my number 10 pick is actually the last thing any of us fans have seen in the Halloween franchise now. And that is the final kind of closing outro of Halloween Ends, and that's the Don't Fear the Reaper scene. And this scene is really, really great. Don't Fear the Reaper by Blue Oyster Cult is actually my favorite song of all time, like legitimately my favorite song. I don't know what it is about it. I think I heard it for the first time when I was really little and just felt like it was like a really eerie but pretty song. And the fact that it's in the original is amazing. And the fact that they closed up the entire franchise with this song, it's a chef's kiss, man. It is perfect. So this scene is all in all an ode to the original. And it kind of really gives a capstone to the franchise. You've got, obviously, in 1978, after it's been discovered that Michael is no longer laying on the lawn, you see shots of the house and where things had happened. And there's this breathing, which sounds a lot like me after running 40 yards. And it's Michael, and you don't really know where he's at. He lives still. And it's creepy, but with Halloween Ends, you sort of get this resolution. Obviously you've got sort of Laurie's monologue earlier in this scene, and it leads up to, the end where, she maybe has a potential cherry blossom relationship with Officer Hawkins. Allison's doing good things. She's alive. She's well. She's living, breathing. And there is finally peace, and you see the home. Obviously, where 10 minutes earlier in the film, Michael and Laurie were absolutely tearing each other apart and fighting to the death. But now it is calm, and you see the different rooms in the house where these horrible things have occurred, but it's pure silence. And you finally get that shot of the mask on the table, and you zoom in and you kind of wonder what's going on. I mean, I think about this moment in the theaters and I get chills. And the opening chords to Don't Fear the Reaper play, and you get the Halloween Ends title card, and it is just incredible, man. I love the way that film ends. And, say what you want about that film. Obviously, people know I'm a fan of it. Blaine's a fan of it. But, I think regardless, however you want to write the script of what happened in Halloween Ends, the way that last sort of montage of shots goes and that Don't Fear the Reaper ending, incredible. Obviously you don't want to see Michael dead in any movie because that means we aren't getting a sequel. And while I don't believe we'll get a sequel to Halloween Ends ever, and I kind of hope we don't, I love the way that kind of tied it together. We know as moviegoers and as fans of this franchise that Michael will be back one way or another. But, if you're going to have Michael go, what a cool way to kind of wrap everything up. And so, yeah, that comes in at number 10 for me is the Don't Fear the Reaper Halloween Ends scene for me. And with that being said, we're going all the way back to 1978 with my number 9 pick, which is very simple scene. I'm not going to have to go in depth as much, but it's the walking home from school scene with Lori, Annie, and Linda. And just the creepiness factor, because that's sort of when these three girls who are just good average teenagers, their life is about to change forever. And obviously you've got Michael pulling up in the car, hey jerk, speed kills, the whole nine, and it's just a really creepy scene. They see him standing behind the bush. Incredible. I love that sort of creep factor. And one thing that I talk about with Blaine a lot is the Halloween films and Michael Myers in general. It's really good at putting the characters in scenarios where people are already a little bit on edge. And what I mean by that is, like, you'll find Michael Myers, hidden behind a dark door. You'll find him, when you look out your window, all of a sudden, who's this creep that's standing there? You're taking a shower. He's somewhere in the house. It's kind of these moments where people feel naturally sort of vulnerable. And if you play mind games right, you'll creep yourself out and get some anxiety. And before you know it, you're, flipping all the lights on in the house and checking every corner. I love that this scene is sort of the first time you really feel that, where, okay, he has a target. If you want to go based on Laurie's not his brother, or Michael's not Laurie's brother, Michael has now picked his target, and you'll see later on in the film that he kind of systematically takes them out, and kind of puts them in a maze of their own neighborhood, which is awesome. Super methodical, very creepy. But this is the first scene where, like I said, you get that transition. Things are starting to get creepier. Things are getting weirder. And you're you tense up for the first time in the film. I love this scene. It's very simple, very cool. And it's one of the reasons I love the original Halloween. And I know it would be really easy for me to take this list and list off, basically 10 things from the first two movies because they become such classics in the franchise. But I'm about to hit you with one of a movie that, I don't particularly care for. And I think it might have even been the bottom of my list when we did our rankings for this year. And that would be Halloween 2, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, that is. A film that I'm not a big proponent of. I thought it got really weird, and apparently there was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes of that film to why it might not have turned out perfect. But yeah, it's not one that I necessarily look forward to watching every year. I do watch it every year because this is who I am. This is what I do. But the scene of this film that I'm referring to is where we've got full-blown Hobo Myers walking through the field, and the truck full of people that run the farm or whatever it is are telling him, hey, we've told you this before, you got to get off this land. And the kills are one thing. It's very brutal, very scary. The woman in the car is even like, please, like forget them. Like she's trying to like be nice to him because they're beating the hell out of him. But he ends up murking her too, man. It doesn't matter. You're dealing with Michael Myers, baby. And but that's not even why I love this scene. The cinematography of Michael walking through that foggy, dark field, some of my favorite shots in that film, and that is one thing that I do want to shout out about Rob Zombie's H2 is the imagery, even when it doesn't make sense in the film or for the film, always very cool. Like the even down to the poster of him standing in the pumpkin patch, like that's ideal Michael Myers for me. Like that is, kind of the in my head, I want Michael Myers going through a pumpkin patch. Like that needs to happen in another film. But yeah, that field scene, that's the best way I could describe it, of Halloween 2 from 2009, Rob Zombie. It is my favorite scene of that film, and it's made my list here at number 8. And there's something to be said about the way that Michael looks in that film. It's definitely like the grungiest we've ever seen Michael. And like I said, like just purely cinematography and kind of visual wise, aesthetically, very, very creepy and very spooky. It might not feel like the shape that I know and love. But man, seeing Michael in the hood, I mean, obviously he puts the mask on. It is, I looked up this scene and it was titled Rebirth. And I thought that was a great way to describe that scene, because it is kind of like Michael getting back into himself. He's got his kind of strength back and he's ready to go chase down his sister again. And it's, again, despite what you may say about that film, I know there are people who love those two films, and more power to you. I love that people have different favorite films that are so different from mine in this franchise. But I'll give that one to you guys. I mean, that is a badass scene. And we're going to kick it even further into current era when it comes to my number 7 pick. I've talked a lot about how the new trilogy really does a badass job of opening and closing the films. Like they do a great job of setting the tone. And obviously, like my number 10 pick, closing a film out and leaving you with a certain feeling. And for my number 7 pick, I want to go with the opening cold intro or cold open of Halloween 2018. This is, obviously you do got to factor in a little bit of nostalgia. This was the first time I had ever purchased a ticket to go and see Michael on the big screen. I'm 26 years old. I was still too young when like Rob Zombie Duo came out, even though I was watching it as soon as it got to Netflix or streaming or whatever. And I was watching like H2O and Resurrection at home with Blaine. But this was, for me, a really big moment because I was seeing Michael Myers on the big screen. We knew that this was a direct sequel to my favorite movie of all time. And there was just so much hype going into that moment. And, obviously we've got, the logos pop, and then we're into Smith's Grove Sanitarium, which if you watch the first one, we never get a really good look to the interior, what's going on at Smith's Grove. You just get the faraway shot in the Loomis scene when Michael escapes. And man, that opening, you've got this incredible crescendo build of anxiety and fear, and it's not just felt by Dr. Sartain or the two podcasters. It's felt by literally every other I don't know if you want to call them patients or inmates at this crazy ass place. But everybody's sort of building up, and the tension just rises that much further when the mask is pulled out of the bag and he's holding it in front of Michael and he wants him to speak. That was a big part of 2018, was trying to get Michael to speak, at least for Dr. Sartain and for the podcasters. And they thought, maybe this could, shake something in him and he'd speak. And instead it almost like reawoke the beast in Michael if it ever went dormant. Um, but yeah, just the build up, and you've got the guy singing Figaro or whatever whatever he's saying. But the dogs are barking. Everything is kind of building up, and you're getting all these crazy cut shots of sort of the drama of it all swelling and building up. And finally you get hit with probably the best title sequence animation as far as like the classic pumpkin style of the entire franchise, and that is the original 1978 pumpkin, in a reverse time lapse coming back from the dead. Which, when I saw that, I was like, what a genius way to bring it back to 78 and make it feel refreshing and new. I don't know if they did it with CGI. I would imagine that they did. It looks phenomenal. And you've got the old school style credits. It's great, man. I can't say enough good stuff about the first, whatever it is, 5 minutes of that film. And I genuinely do love 2018 as a film in general. But for me, going into the theaters a little bit, nervous, but overall just extremely hyped for this film. Um, what a way to kick it off, man. I still get chills thinking about sitting in the theater, finally getting to see, sort of weirdly and strangely enough, my, hero on screen, for the first time in my life that I've watched since I was too young to watch this shit. But yeah, just an awesome way to kick off that film, bring things back, and set the tone, but B, just to like give a little ode to the original, and I love it, man. So yeah, that would be my number 7 pick, which is the Smith's Grove intro of Halloween 2018. Now, I didn't even realize I had ranked it like this, but the next pick, my number 6 favorite top 10 scenes of the Halloween franchise, actually comes again with another intro of a film in the David Gordon Green trilogy. And I think this is going to rank high in Blaine's list. I would imagine it would. I would be surprised if it didn't. But this is the the flashback scene, the return to 1978, where we get to see sort of what Hawkins was talking about in Halloween 2018, and we get to go back to the night that started it all, the night that he came home. Man, when we go back to 1978 in that film, I remember I was sitting with Blaine and we were like, this is incredible. I mean, they nailed it. I don't know if they used the exact same kind of cameras, but I know that they did good work to use the same kind of lighting, and they paid attention to the style of jacket that the cops were wearing in the first film. Christopher Nelson did a great job with the flashback mask. I think it is, different enough from 1978 that, it is willing of, or it earns its own sort of space amongst the Michael Myers masks. Part of me wishes it looked exactly like the 78, but it is sort of this more ghoulish, maybe not ghoulish, but it's this really pale white that really looks great on camera. And you get obviously like Lonnie running away from Michael on the street. You've got this great scene with the recreation of Dr. Loomis, which when I saw it in person, you first hear Loomis outside, and I remember kind of turning to Blaine like, oh, they got that same voice actor who did He Needs to Die from 2018. But then obviously he walks into this house, and it looks like Loomis, man. Like I'm a fan of like the Star Wars franchise, where they've tried to bring people back, and it always kind of looks like shit. But this movie, man, and I think a lot of it has to go to Christopher Nelson with the great practical effects, the makeup. And also having, I believe he was a cameraman or someone in the crew, the production of this film that looked a lot like Dr. Loomis to begin with. Man, it was just perfect. Like there was no sort of like uncanny valley. What's going on here? I could see that the budget wasn't high enough to get this guy to look right. No, it looked perfect. That was Dr. Loomis down there, yelling up, "Did Michael kill again?" And man, badass, dude. Obviously, it ties into the whole Hawkins storyline, where Hawkins, kind of is responsible to a degree with Michael still being alive, still killing, because he pulled Loomis's hand up when he was going to shoot Michael. And then you get a great shot to end it all. That is a tie back to 1978, where Michael is in the clown costume. His parents arrive after he's killed Judith, and he's just standing there in front of the Myers house. You get that shot again, and sort of like what they did with that "Don't Fear the Reaper" scene. What a great way to close out any sort of visions back to 78 that exist. I love that they did the flashback scene. I remember watching the Reddit forums and online elsewhere in the Halloween community, Halloween News Daily, everywhere, and seeing, they're filming the sequel to Halloween 2018, but that mask looks pretty fresh, and they're in the original neighborhood, and people started putting together the pieces that they're doing a flashback scene, and then COVID hit, and you didn't get the film until years later. But I remember that was my first sort of look into Halloween Kills, and thinking like, man, this is going to be the best Halloween film of all time. And it ended up being my least favorite out of the new trilogy. But that one scene, man, that carries a lot of weight for me in watching that film. I think this October, when I go back and I watch everything all over again, that's going to be my number one reason for wanting to watch Halloween Kills. And the movie has grown on me more over time, but I remember leaving the theater and thinking like, outside of the flashback scene, not a huge fan, but the flashback scene was awesome. And to this day, holds up. It's amazing. I love the way they did it. Everybody who did it, you could tell it was a labor of love, trying to make it feel and look like the 1978 classic that we all love. So that is my number 6 pick. That is the flashback scene from Halloween Kills. Now, moving forward, we are halfway through. And looking forward, we are at number 5, and that is a film or a scene from a film that meant a lot to me growing up. And I've talked about it on the show before. How the older movies did feel old to me. When I was, like I said, probably 6 or 7, 8, 9 years old watching these films. And the ones that felt current were sort of the two that I clinged onto, which were Halloween H2O and Halloween Resurrection, which are sort of sister films. And for me, obviously, H2O is much, much higher on my ranking. I freaking adore this film. And it has my number 5 favorite scene in the entire franchise in it. And it's a scene that was so good, it was actually called back to in Halloween 2018. And what I'm referring to is the bathroom scene. We even got to talk to Chris Durand on this podcast about this scene. Go check that episode out when you're done with this one. He let us in on a couple of behind the scenes funny things that were happening here. But the gist is it essentially goes back to what I love about that walking home from school scene with Lori, Linda, and Annie, where you're in this vulnerable spot. And there is an intruder, in this situation. Now, we've got this mom and this daughter. They try to go to the ladies' room. It's locked. So they go to the boys' room. And, they get in there. The little girl has a freak out. She thinks there's spiders in the stall. Already spooky as shit. You scared me already. I'm terrified of spiders. But then, you hear the door swing open. the audience knows who's walking in. I mean, it's no secret Michael Myers is walking in the bathroom. But to the mom's point of view, I don't really care who's walking in that bathroom. I'm gonna be a little freaked out. They're kind of in the middle of nowhere. And somebody walks in the door and they're walking slow and you're watching these boots step across. And obviously she's got to be thinking all sorts of horrible things that could be going down in the next transpiring minutes. And us too, the audience, are sort of going like, oh my God, like, is Michael going to either murk a child or take the mother from the child? But he's creeping and he's looking around, and eventually the door closes again, and the mother is able to breathe a sigh of relief. And then we look out and we see that he has dropped off his old car for their car, and Michael steals and drives again. It's a very simple scene. But I think it was so effective, and it's one of the creepiest scenes in H2O, which we've talked about was sort of the first dive into being a little bit more comedic. It obviously has huge Scream vibes, but I really think it knocks it out of the park in this scene. I think it's creepy. I think it's spooky. Just you put yourself in that position and you'd be creeped out. I think anytime I'm in a public restroom now, somebody swings the door open, I get ready to fight for my life. So thank you, Christopher Durand, for that. And yeah, H2O, great film. Ends up being my number 5 favorite scene of the Halloween franchise of all time. So let's move into number 4 of this list, which again, it's not a kill scene. It's just a scene that scares the absolute shit out of me every time I watch it, just because I think of what is happening in this scene. And it's in Halloween 1978, the classic, which is this is my favorite from that film. And we're back to Smith's Grove, man. We are back. It is Marion Chambers and Sam Loomis are pulling up, and you're driving in, and there's been an escape. And we know more now about the sort of horrible nature of Smith's Grove, but you don't really know. You've kind of got the old school sense of what a sanitarium was, and essentially you've got all these people that are worthy of being in the same space as Michael Myers, which is creepy to its own degree, all walking out, man. And they drive in, and it's rainy and it's dark, it's night. You're driving up to an asylum, and there's all these kind of ghostly figures dressed in all white, walking around. And Michael Myers is one of them, but that doesn't mean he's the only threat walking around outside of this place. It's just a really spooky scene that I think I overlooked for a really long time. So I think that's why it hits me so hard now, and why it's ranked so high on my scene list. It's just such a spooky scene. And then obviously it comes to the big moment of Michael Myers, coming in and attacking Marion Chambers and Sam Loomis in the car. Freaky ass scene, dude. It's just one of those things where for probably the only time in these films where Michael is one of many threats out there. And it's just kind of the last thing you'd want to see if you were doing a night drive to an asylum, which I know a lot of people do. So that's why it comes in at number 4 for me. I have a feeling that's going to end up on Blaine's list somewhere in the top 10. Just because we've talked about how spooky of a scene that one is. So yeah, coming in at number, looks like we're out to number 3 here, which is crazy. We are zooming through this list. It's actually something that we talked about pretty recently on the podcast, which is The Final Effort is the name that I wrote down for this, of Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. And that is when, you got Tom Atkins. I forget his character name right off the bat right now, but Tom is, he's escaped not Smith's Grove, Silver Shamrock, and shit is still going down, and we've kind of come to this point. He's defeated an evil robot of his young lover, and now he is trying to save literally the children of America. And there's this commercial or whatever, this special presentation that's going to be playing across at least the United States, maybe the world. And as crazy as it sounds, it's going to like melt the brains and like explode the heads of all these children who are wearing Silver Shamrock masks. Just a freaky ass premise on its own. But then you've got Tom Atkins calling up, he like calls an operator, but I guess we're supposed to think it's like the president of TV, who is, he's begging this person, take it off the air, take it off. And we know what's going to happen if it's not taken off. You finally see it come off one screen. We're like, okay, good. He flips to the next channel. It's still freaking on. And, he ends up just screaming at the phone, like, take it off, turn it off, or whatever he's saying. And it cuts. And that's the end of the film. You don't know whether or not, hundreds of thousands of kids just passed away because of some ancient, stone, what was Stonehenge rock giving these robots powers. It's a wild premise. If you're coming in here and you haven't seen Halloween 3, and I'm saying this, you probably think I'm like a tab deep in acid right now, but that is genuinely the premise of this film. It's crazy, but it brings you to this point where you're like, dude, did a bunch of people just die? Like, did they just end this movie with me not knowing if like a ton of kids just died? Insane, crazy scene. Leaves you with kind of a sick feeling in your stomach after this kind of like wacky out there film ends on a really like hard, gruesome, disgusting point. And that's why it's ended up so high on my list, just because of that lasting effect that final shot gives you, where he's begging on the phone, man, to get this turned off. And we've seen it worked, but there's no reason for the president of TV to believe this random nurse detective, creep that's calling on the phone. But you don't know how it's gonna go after that, and we never will. And I think that's an awesome ending to a horror film, because a lot of the times horror films will try to wrap things up, and maybe there'll be one final scare, just a little tease, but this genuinely ends on like a oh my god moment. Really cool. I think the first time I watched it, I was not expecting the credits to roll right there. And yeah, just the way that final shot makes me feel really brings it above so much of this franchise for me. But yeah, so that's my number 3 with Halloween 3, very fitting. And then we're going to go into one that I know if it's not Blaine's top, it's at least in the top 3. And I'll be shocked if it isn't Blaine. So hopefully this doesn't change. I actually think he's recording this week, so it shouldn't change his opinion of it too much. But the opening title sequence of Halloween 4, as simple and basic as that sequence and that scene is my second favorite scene in all of Halloween. And I think it literally just comes back to like being a dude who loves the actual holiday of Halloween, like above everything. Maybe even more than I love the Halloween franchise, I love the holiday of Halloween. It is my favorite day of the year. I wish I was born on Halloween. I wish every day was Halloween. it's just such a magical day that so few films have properly caught on camera. I think, you think of Christmas movies, there are so many Christmas movies that, kind of capture what it feels like on Christmas, but Halloween is more than just the trick-or-treating. I think that's a huge part of it, obviously, but it's the dead air, it's the cold wind, it's the autumn nights or autumn life where things are getting colder, things are dying. There's, sort of, even small towns have got these Halloween decorations up on their houses or on a mailbox, etc. And it's a spooky ass time of the year, man. I think whoever was in charge of putting Halloween on October 31st, I think it was like the pagans. Great job putting that there. That was an excellent time. Definitely the spookiest time for that holiday. But yeah, I think, like I said, so few films capture what that feeling is like. And dude, the opening sequence of Halloween 4, incredible. Obviously, you had a lot to sort of live up to with that opening sequence. You've got, Halloween 3 had just happened. People were pissed off. Where's Michael Myers? Okay, we're going to actually name this one The Return of Michael Myers. So you bastards know, come to the theaters. You're going to see out there slashing. But obviously you've got the intro with the actual Michael Myers in the hospital. That does happen. But this scene really sets the tone for how seriously they took this film, and what it meant to have Michael Myers back on screen, now becoming the icon that he is. And yeah, seeing the mailbox, seeing the hanging decorations, just knowing that outside of Michael Myers, this spooky, incredible night is happening, is great. And I think it's the first time in any of these films where it really, really feels like the night of Halloween. H78, you've got, kids trick-or-treating at like 3 p.m. Absurd. I don't know how it happened in your neighborhood, but it was dark out when kids trick-or-treated in mine. And, obviously they're filming in California, so there's like green leaves everywhere, but seeing the opening of this scene where, we're not overdoing it with any score. It's pretty just kind of eerie. I love the theme that plays in this scene. And you're just getting shots of this town that is about to once again get ravaged by Michael Myers. It sort of ties back to like that Don't Fear the Reaper scene or the ending of Halloween 1978, where you're seeing these shots of this place. In this case, it's beforehand, where a lot of shit is about to go down. Badass, love it. When I think of Halloween, when I wake up on Halloween, I play two things. I play the Halloween Tree opening, which is another great film that I think captures that. And then the Halloween 4 intro, man, it is incredible. And it just gets me in the spirit of Halloween. When I think about it, I'm ready for October, man, and it's not that far away. So yeah, that is why it ranks so high up, even though it's a very simple scene. I know a lot of people might be like, why would that beat out, the death of Bob and Linda, etc. Whatever. It just means a lot to me, man. And I know it means a lot to Blaine too. That scene just captures so much of what I love about October 31st, baby. And it happens every year, luckily enough for me. So let's move on to my number one favorite all time, Austin's pick for the best scene in Halloween, the franchise. And this is another one, man. This is, I believe I only have two from this film. Yeah. So this is from Halloween 2018. And I think this might have made my favorite kill. It should have if it didn't. But Michael's rampage. And that is the scene where we've got the Shape Returns playing. It starts out with a kid bumping into Michael and, obviously being like, oh shit, and walking away. It's Halloween night. People are trick-or-treating. The nurse and the doctor that are in Halloween Kills are getting ready to leave to go to the bar. And you see sort of this montage, man. And it's that whole film. I've talked about how 2018 kind of suffers from a Blumhouse or a Bloomhouse vibe the entire time. That scene was the first time where I'm like, oh, okay, they know what they're doing. I had to trust the process. And it was, Michael gets bumped into, he takes a right, he goes into the shed, picks up a hammer, moves into one house, and just kind of systematically takes out a few people. And it's all one shot. It's a beautiful one shot, just like the 1978 opening scene, where Michael is going door to door, murking the civilians of Haddonfield. Man, it is a beautiful, beautiful scene. As fucked up as that sounds now that I'm hearing myself say it, but it's just an awesome scene, man. And the special effects, the props, the makeup, everything in that scene is really well done. I wonder how many shots it took to get that right. Hopefully we can get somebody from the creation of that scene on the podcast to talk about that one, because man, when I think, and this is genuinely when I was sitting down, at my lunch break at work, writing down, okay, what are my top 10? What are really my top 10 scenes? And I thought, if I had to describe to somebody who had never heard of Michael Myers and didn't know what really Michael Myers was about, I would sit them down and I'd watch this scene with them, because to me, in my head, that is what Michael Myers is. He's not a robot, but he's just this evil thing that's passing from one place to another with no emotion, no reason or rhyme behind what he's doing. He's just killing, man, and he's a monster. There's a great shot where he's going down the side of a house, and you first see this massive shadow that casts against Haddonfield night, and it's Michael, and then eventually you see the real Michael walking down. Love the way that they lit that film. That's obviously very intentional. And I think it's great. You've got the mom calling on the phone, hearing about like, oh, some stuff's going down in Haddonfield. And she's like, all right, well, I'll keep an eye out. And she closes the blinds or whatever. And she's looking out, and she takes a knife through the face, man. It is just brutal. It's evil. And to me, it's everything that the Halloween franchise and Michael Myers in general is about. I could probably talk about that scene in general for another hour, but that is essentially all you need to know. That is my top 10 favorite scenes of the Halloween franchise, man. It's it's weird to kind of sit down. Originally, Blaine and I were going to do a top 5, and we're going to sit here together and go back to back, but there's so much to talk about with each of these scenes. You don't really want to undercut anything here. And so those were my picks. If you disagree with some of them, maybe Blaine's a little bit closer. But like I said, if you're going to aim any hate, aim it at his video. He could take it. He's an older, big, strong man. I'm looking forward a lot to hearing what he's got to say. And it was fun to kind of sit down, and Blaine and I both said, like, man, it is really hard to pick out 10 scenes from these films, because I could have a top 10 favorite scenes from Halloween 2, 1981. We're so in depth with this, and we love it so much. To actually go with 10 is pretty difficult. And I think I picked some that maybe, the other hardcore fans might not put in their top 10. They might aim more towards Halloween 1, 2, 4, and some of the earlier entries in the franchise. But I think the David Gordon Green trilogy really brought us a lot of great moments. And there are movies like H2O that really just mean a lot to me, man. And I hope my list was at least a little bit interesting to the watcher at home. And let me know where you agree, where you disagree. Let me know your top 10 favorite moments of this wonderful Halloween franchise that Blaine and I have a podcast on. We are the only podcast in the world that does weekly Michael Myers content, man. There are other great podcasts, but we are coming out every Friday with this thing. We haven't missed a week yet. We've been going since January. There's so much fun stuff coming down the pipeline. I think once H45 kicks off, this whole thing is about to explode. And I'm really just excited to be along for the ride. There's so much that we've got coming up. Obviously, we've got Dick Warlock coming up on the show very soon. Can't wait to talk to him about Halloween 2 and Halloween 3. But yeah, man, thank you so much for watching or listening to episode 27 of the Halloween Lives podcast, the podcast of Michael Myers. I'm Austin Duncan. If you like what you saw here today, check out our other podcast. We got some good stuff. We've also got some costume content and some mask stuff. Maybe coming soon. Maybe who knows? But yeah, drop us a like. Give us the old subscribe. Hit that fucking bell, man. And we will, or Blaine will, see you next week. I won't see you for 2 weeks. I'll miss you. Please take it easy. And thank you for watching.